Number 10. Spirit Airlines outburst. In 2018, a passenger on a Spirit Airlines flight from Houston to Minneapolis had a meltdown. This wasn't the first meltdown on a Spirit Airlines trip, and it certainly won't be the last. A woman started pacing neurotically up and down the aisle while screaming like an absolute lunatic. Why was she so worked up? The flight had needed to make an emergency landing in Rochester because another passenger was in medical distress. Rather than being respectful of somebody having a medical emergency, the woman lost her marbles. She wanted to be let off the plane. She was threatening people that her brothers would come up and just acting totally irrational. But it's even stranger than that. According to eyewitness and fellow passenger Francis Andrea, the woman had initially wanted to help with the medical emergency. She claimed she was a nurse, but when the crew told her to be seated and that they already had the situation under control, that was when she began to freak out. She screamed that her brothers were Marine snipers, then collapsed on a stranger's lap and started to cry. It's believed she was suffering from some sort of PTSD attack. In any case, she was removed from the aircraft when the police showed up. Number 9. The drunk flasher. Yet another insane incident happened on a Spirit Airlines flight. This time, it involved both a toxic and intoxicated woman on March 27, 2019. She threw a fit, argued with a flight attendant, and then showed her business off to the passengers. And she did it all on camera. In fact, she did it in front of several cameras, as pretty much everyone on board had their phones out recording her. It began with a talk to a flight attendant. We're not sure what exactly they were talking about, but things got heated very quickly. From out of nowhere, the woman began screaming very loudly and throwing very vulgar obscenities at the stewardess. What followed was an unhinged rant of biblical proportions. As the woman stood in the middle of the aisle, she just kept screaming and ranting and saying things that honestly didn't make any sense. One of the things she kept repeating was the phrase, "Who's salty?" Finally, when she realized she had at least a dozen phones pointed at her, she bent over and showed everyone her rear end. As if showing her bare bottom to a group of strangers on an airplane wasn't enough, she proceeded to twerk in front of everyone. Every single person on that plane got front row seats to the weirdest and most unwanted burlesque show in history. Then, she took her belongings from the overhead compartment and marched off the plane to a great applause. Number 8. The Delta Karen. Patricia Cornwall is the Delta Karen, one of the most notorious middle-aged white women who had her outburst captured on video in 2021. She was arrested for slapping a passenger across their face on a Delta flight on December 23rd, but she was also arrested on a separate occasion for trying to fight a police officer in Florida following a DUI. Let's talk about the DUI first. Patricia crashed her gray Nissan on November 10th in Santa Rosa Beach. She at first refused to exit the vehicle or even tell the police her name. When she finally got out, it was pretty clear she was wasted. She immediately attacked one of the deputies. She could barely talk, and she failed a sobriety test. According to court documents, Patricia had a long and terrible history of violent outbursts and erratic behavior. She also had a DUI in 2020. How this woman was allowed to wander around in public after multiple DUIs and violent attacks is beyond comprehension. As for the incident on the Delta Airlines flight, it was pretty messed up. It started when Patricia got out of her seat and the drink cart started going by. It was blocking her way, and the flight attendant asked her to sit in a vacant seat until the beverage service was over. In response, Patricia said, "What am I, Rosa Parks?" And in response to that bizarre question, another man on the flight said, "You aren't black, this isn't Alabama, and this isn't a bus." Patricia then had a full-blown attack of psychosis. She screamed at the man for not wearing a mask, even though he was eating, and she didn't have a mask on either. She then punched the senior citizen in the face. She was arrested the very second the plane landed and was taken into custody by the FBI. Number 7. The humiliated Playboy model. A Playboy model was kicked off a Southwest Airlines flight with her 7-year-old son. Eve J. Marie had just boarded her flight from Dallas to Tulsa on October 29, 2020. Moments after she got on the plane, flight attendants asked her and her son to leave immediately. You'll never believe why. Eve wasn't acting erratically, she wasn't screaming at anyone, and she wasn't making a scene. But she was wearing a top that airline employees felt was too revealing. In the 2020s, a woman and her child were kicked off a plane because the airport officials didn't like her outfit. What was she wearing? The Instagram influencer and model for Playboy had a low-cut leopard print top that showed off quite a bit of cleavage. According to the crew, it was too much cleavage, going against their dress code policy. Eve was humiliated, embarrassed, and even offended as she walked off the plane with her little boy. Naturally, Eve didn't go down without a battle when she confronted the airport employees, demanding to know what exactly their policy entails. They couldn't agree on anything. What it really came down to was that her chest was too large, her shirt was too small, and it made people uncomfortable. But in the end, she was allowed back on the flight provided she covered her chest with a blanket. Number 6. Duct tape to her seat. In 2021, in the sunny month of July, a woman spent most of her trip from Dallas-Fort Worth to Charlotte duct taped to her seat. According to the airline, she attacked the flight attendants and then tried to open the front door of the plane. It was a pretty unusual outburst. It started about 1.5 hours into the flight, and most people on board had no idea what was happening. The attendants were running up and down the aisles, whispering to one another, locking bathroom doors, and acting extremely suspicious. They wouldn't say what was going on, but there appeared to be some kind of distress. It looked like they're in the midst of some secret chaos. Unknown to most of the passengers, a woman had gotten up, exclaimed that she needed to get off the plane, and started banging on the exit door, demanding to be let off. When the attendants tried to subdue her, she started biting them. They had no choice but to take her down and duct tape her to the seat. In the end, we don't know what motivated this woman to try opening a door mid-flight. We don't even know her name. She was taken by police when the plane landed, and we haven't heard anything since. Number 5. Opening the exit door. Yet another unruly airline passenger tried to open up the exit door in the middle of a flight. This time, it happened in early 2020 on an American Airlines flight bound for Dallas from Chicago. The plane was forced to make an emergency landing in St. Louis because of an unidentified man lost his mind and tried opening the door. According to passenger Jonathan Cohen, the man had big, black, gazing eyes, totally devoid of any emotion. The unidentified man attacked the door, flipping levers and trying manually to push the thing open. Of course, anyone who knows anything about the laws of physics knows that this is impossible. Emergency doors are sealed automatically by cabin pressure inside the airplane. He couldn't have opened that thing with a jackhammer. And in any case, he was subdued within seconds by the other passengers, who panicked and thought he was about to have them all sucked out of the airplane into the engines. The plane landed safely, and police took the man away with them. But neither the police in St. Louis nor the airport authorities would comment on the incident, so we don't know what the man's motive was. Number 4. The Stinker. A Boeing 737 traveling from the Netherlands to Spain was forced to make an emergency landing because one of the passengers stank so bad. He had what other passengers described as an unbearable body odor, causing people to get sick and even faint. He smelled as if he hadn't washed himself in weeks, and at least one person reportedly vomited. Staff on board the flight tried to quarantine him in the bathroom, but the pilots had to divert the flight and get the man off. When they landed, the man was picked up by medical personnel and escorted away. When asked what happened, the Transavia Airlines said they made an emergency landing due to medical reasons. But the truth is, it was just one stinky man who may or may not have ever had a shower in his entire life. Number 3. Did someone call for a doctor? The biggest shock of 2017, at least when it came to airplanes, was when a Kentucky doctor was dragged off a United Airlines flight like some kind of common criminal. The incident went viral and caused a rippling uproar through the community. Here's how it all went down. Dr. David Dow paid for his ticket and got onto his flight. It should have been that simple. However, United had overbooked their flight. They sold too many tickets and didn't have enough room for everyone. So they asked the doctor if he could please leave. Naturally, the doctor didn't want to leave. He had purchased his ticket and had somewhere to be. He couldn't just get off the plane. But when he refused, things took a violent and shocking turn. According to what he told ABC News in an interview 2 years later, he hit his head against the ceiling as the police struggled to rip him from his seat. After that, everything went dark, but the people on the airplane remember what happened, and so does everyone who saw the video. The police dragged him off the plane by his arms like he was an unruly child. Since the incident, David's life has been hard. He used to run marathons, and now he can barely run 3 miles because he was lingering damage from the brutal attack by the cops. He's also been traumatized, but one good thing did come out of the incident. It went viral, it made headlines, and in 2017, David settled a suit with the airline for an undisclosed amount of money. Hopefully it was enough to let David retire early. Number 2. The Mile High Fight Club. In summer of 2020, a fight broke out during a trip from Amsterdam to Ibiza when two drunk British guys refused to wear their face masks. It was a serious brodown, with the two unruly British passengers, one of them topless, getting into a brawl with one of the other passengers. Even though their anger was aimed at one guy, their selfish and childish antics had the rest of the plane turn on them. When the fight started, it was a pandemonium. The shirtless man got punched in the nose, he started bleeding on people, and he ended up being pinned on the dirty airplane carpet of the aisle, while the rest of the passengers tried to defuse the chaos. Imagine a riot in the confined space of a cramped airline cabin. It was extremely uncomfortable for everyone. For the Americans watching, young British people going to Ibiza is the equivalent of a bunch of spring break party animals flying from the States to Cancun. It's not that unusual to see vacation goers already drunk when they get on the plane in preparation for their big vacation. That's exactly what happened here. But unfortunately for the men who were on their way to Spain for vacation, they were arrested upon their arrival. Instead of having a bunch of fun in the sun, these guys were hauled off by Spanish cops. And all because they couldn't be bothered to wear their masks or put on their shirts. And number 1. The American Airlines Karen. The American Airlines Karen was escorted off an airplane on July 19, 2020. She was captured on video being led from the cabin to a roaring applause by the passengers. It all started when the Karen refused to wear a mask, citing a mysterious medical condition. She had been a nightmare immediately, from the very second she stepped onto the gate and refused to put a mask over her face. She also demanded to be boarded first, then proceeded to make a phone call and speak loudly while an attendant told her to put away the device. Basically, she was just being obviously obnoxious. Maybe if she would have kept to herself, kept her mouth covered with her sleeve, and not made any ruckus, she may have made it to her ultimate destination of North Carolina. But like so many Karens out there, she just had to be the center of attention. After being a real nuisance and positively refusing to wear a mask, she was booted off the flight, and everyone on board was very happy. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be seated next to a guy who stinks like a garbage dump or an insane Karen? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe. See you next time.